Landon was a twin in 2012. Life was pretty good. I was engaged. I have two older children, Michael and Morgan. We had a beautiful home out in the country. We weren't even sure that we were going to be able to have any children together. My older children are from previous relationships. And then we got pregnant with twins. So it was really exciting. Healthiest pregnancy I've ever had. The doctor said it was the healthiest multiples pregnancy he's ever seen. It was good. I felt great, other than being huge with two of them. And then on a Friday the 13th, January 2012, we went in for the weekly non-stress tests that they do in your last trimester when you're pregnant with multiples. I was 36 weeks. I was scheduled to have a cesarean section and deliver the boys the following week. And I should back up, actually. The night before, I had gone back to college, and the night before, ironically, was my first night of a death and dying psychology class. And we happened to learn that night about how unnatural it is when a parent loses a child, and that complicated grief is the one type of grief that never ends. It changes. It gets easier to manage, but I agree, it doesn't stop. I was going to school about an hour away from my home. So after class that night, I was driving home thinking about what I had learned in class, and I was thinking about a friend of ours that had lost a baby. They found out in the pregnancy that the baby, his brain had stopped developing. And so the mom had to finish carrying it to term. And here I am about a week away from delivering my twins, and the father of my twins had been a pallbearer at that baby's funeral. So I was thinking about this as I was driving home, and I remember reaching a stoplight and sitting at the stoplight, and all of a sudden there was this amazing jolt inside me. I don't even know how to explain it. It was just like the biggest kick I've ever felt from the inside, and it literally, my breath kind of stopped. And I just had this weird feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but I got home that night, and I was telling my baby's father about it, and we started talking about the friend that had lost a baby. And I remember telling him that night that my worst nightmare was losing one of my children, and that I didn't know what I would ever do if I lost one of my children, or if I had to bury one of my children. And we got up the next day, Friday the 13th, went to the hospital for our non-stress test. Landon was baby B. Baby B was always very active, always turning somersaults, always feisty whenever it came to trying to find his heartbeat. He liked to just be difficult. There was nothing wrong with him, just he liked to play. So they got the monitor on baby A, which is Logan. Got his heartbeat, and the nurse kept trying to find baby B. And she wasn't sure if she was getting him or if she was getting my heartbeat. So she called in another nurse, and that nurse tried for 20 minutes. And we all started making jokes about it being Friday the 13th and him playing pranks on us, thinking nothing of it. And that nurse called in a third nurse. And after about another half hour, when nobody could catch the heartbeat, they decided to go get my doctor and have him bring in the ultrasound. So the doctor came in with it, and the doctor, knowing how healthy the pregnancy had been, wasn't worried at all, figured it was just the normal thing, and he turned it on and he started looking for baby B's heartbeat. And all of a sudden I remember him probing me hard and faster. And then he just stopped. And I looked up, and there was my baby on the screen. And I'm probably the only mother in the world that cannot tell anything on an ultrasound picture. But for some reason, I looked at that screen and I saw that he was just gone before the doctor even said it. And the doctor looked at me and he said, "I'm sorry, Joie, he's not with us anymore." He turned off the ultrasound and he told my son's father and I that we could finish the next week and a half and have the cesarean as scheduled, or he could have me down in surgery in the next 30 minutes in case there was something wrong with the other baby. I already knew what I wanted to do, but they wanted to talk to their father. And so the doctor let us have some privacy. And about 5 minutes later, he came back in the room and he said, "I'm sorry, I know I gave you guys a choice, but I'm not comfortable leaving the other baby in there not knowing what's going on." So I was in the operating room in the next half hour. Called my mother, and it was the only phone call I was able to make. We went down to surgery, and I remember begging to be sedated or to be put under, and they couldn't because they didn't want to depress the other baby's respiratory actions or anything. So I remember laying there and it was the worst 10 minutes of my life. They got my first baby out, and I panicked until I heard him cry. And then I started praying, hoping that when they took baby B out, that I would hear the same thing, that they would be wrong. And they took him out, and I wanted to see him right away. I wanted to see for myself that he was gone, and they didn't want to bring him around the curtain. And I kept waiting to hear him crying and just hoping and praying, but it didn't come. They gave me Landon in the recovery room, and when they handed him to me, a little bit of blood trickled out of his nose, and I didn't care because it was my blood, it was our blood. But at that moment, something mentally happened, and for a second, I thought that they were wrong, that he was alive, but he wasn't. His lips were just purple, but other than that, there was nothing wrong. He looked just like his twin. I remember all the people coming in my hospital room, and I didn't want them there. I wanted everybody to leave me alone. I remember nurses pressuring me to fill out birth certificates and death certificates, and I remember throwing things, just wanting everybody to leave me alone, just go away. I just wanted to hold my dead baby, and I didn't want anything to do with my live one at that time. I don't know how to explain it, but I just wanted Landon, and I wanted the rest of the world to go away. I kept him for a couple days. We took pictures. I held him constantly. I didn't want to let anyone else hold him. I did, but I didn't want to. I think it was about the third day. I just wanted one last look at both of my boys together to see how they were alike in every way. And I remember taking Landon's little cap off, and his skull was starting to decompress, and his body was starting to decompose. And I knew that it was time to let him go, because I didn't want to see him as anything but perfect. I had denied an autopsy because I didn't want him cut into. I didn't want my baby in pieces. And I wanted, their father's deal was that he wanted to be able to walk out of the hospital carrying his sons. And I wanted him to be able to do that, even though he carried Landon out of the hospital to a hearse. We went home the day after that. I had a mental break. I don't know how to explain it. I fell into a deep depression. I couldn't get out of bed. I'd been attached to my surviving twin at that time, and I didn't let him go. And I had to hold him constantly. I couldn't sleep because I would be checking to make sure that he was still breathing. I would go check my older children to make sure that they were still breathing. If I did sleep, I was having night terrors, dreams that my baby was in a cold graveyard crying and alone. A lot of things, responsibilities fell on my fiance at the time. I neglected my older children. I wasn't taking care of them. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't showering. this went on for over a month. Even close people started to get frustrated with me. The father and I started to disconnect. I just disconnected from the world, but everything started to fall on him. Our relationship started to fall apart. And then our surviving twin, got RSV at 12 weeks.